football town. It feels like a football town. The climate there, the winds of the lakes, the whole thing reminds you of a football game of the 60s. It's very nostalgic and very classic in that way. And you could talk about the football teams in all the cities in America, but I promise you, it's deeper there. It's deep.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? Would you rather be than right here, right now?
There are really only 2 seasons in Buffalo, and that's Bill's season and waiting for Bill's season.
That's the way it is in Western New York. It's a way of life. The Bills are a way of life.
Buffalo on a Sunday afternoon, baby! Yeah!
This movie is rated R. Adult language and violence. Lots of...
A rapidly developing defense was led by All-Pro Bruce Smith. 1987 first-round draft pick Shane Conlan. And Cornelius Bennett, acquired in a mid-season trade engineered by Bill Polian. Polian was the behind-the-scenes maestro, orchestrating the Bills' return to prominence.
Hammer time.
Hammer time to me is big plays on defense. To get a sack and a forced fumble, something to disrupt the offense. You get on them and you pound on them. You never let them get back up. I mean, you just keep beating down on them until you can't see the head of the nail anymore.
Snap, backs up in the pocket. He throws, it's deflected and intercepted by the Bills. Leonard Smith at the 30, down to the 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, he scores! Leonard Smith!
You can get it done. You can get it done. What's more, you gotta get it done.
Let's go, guys. We're going to knock their ass off.
A run by Antoine Smith. Antoine ran right over the safety. A running play. Thurman Thomas breaks it at the 25. Still on his feet at the 20. Gets down to the 15. The Tampa 5 and scores.
To the city of Buffalo, to the Buffalo Bills organization, I love you.
The Bills have done it again.
Do you believe it? And now it's for the 2000, boys.
It's like a college town in many ways. If you go to downtown Buffalo, there's banners out the windows, people wearing sweatshirts and T-shirts. Go Bills, go Bills.
Ferguson rolling out, looking, throws toward the end zone. It is caught for the touchdown.
They tore the goalposts down and they passed one of the uprights all the way up from the field to my box.
And that was part of what we wanted to give back to them. We wanted to go out and play extremely well. We wanted to make those people very proud of us.
What a fantastic play by Jim Kelly. Spectacular touchdown run by Kenneth Davis.
Oh, was that ever spectacular?
We're awesome. To be able to accomplish what we did, it's unbelievable.
I mean, how many teams get to the Super Bowl as many times as the Buffalo Bills?
That whole run was a run of greatness, and history will show that there won't be another team to do what this team did.
Reed at the 20-yard line, still on his feet, to the 15, down to the 10, to the 5, in for the touchdown.
I still hear echoes from those sounds which glorify this game. I hear the cheers of the crowd.
Bills can win it here. Reich puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. What a comeback by the Bills.
The memories, their treasured memories, and to have been part of it, is it gratifying? You bet it is.
Touchdown, Roscoe Parrish! Unbelievable!
73,000 jaws dropped right now because it's just electrifying, and he brings this crowd to life once again.
All people wanted in Buffalo was just once to say, yes, our time has come.
think there will be another team in the history of the National Football League that will be able to achieve 4 straight Super Bowl appearances.
I don't think we belong where the Super Bowl champions belong, but I think we belong among some of the greatest teams that ever played. We're awesome.
The metamorphosis of a Jim Kelly from signing in 1983 with the Houston Gamblers and sort of looking differently than about the Buffalo Bills, then here you are today, 2007, 2008, its greatest cheerleader in retaining the Buffalo Bills here. How does that work? How does it?
I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, this definitely wasn't the first place I wanted to make my home. That's for sure. Back about 25 years ago, I guess you should say, somewhere around there. But thank you. It's been full circle. I mean, so many things have happened to me in that time with my life, from marrying my wife from upstate New York to have my family here, and of course my son Hunter being laid to rest here in Western New York. And then really falling in love with the fans of Buffalo. The majority of my friends are from upstate New York, so I thought, why not? Why not spend as much time as I can here, and hopefully down the road, you never know, might be watching the Bills game from the booth as a part of it.
You watched, obviously, the Super Bowl. I'm curious as to who you were rooting for, given your long-standing relationship with Dan Marino, the fact that the Dolphins were kind of the Antichrist during a lot of your time period, and whether you wanted them to continue to be that only undefeated team.
To be honest with you, it's something I never have never cheered for a Miami Dolphins team up until this Super Bowl. And if you were to ask me this question about halfway through the season, I probably would be pulling for the Patriots. But the more Bill Belichick talked, the more it made me pull against him. And then you have Mercury Morris. The more he talked, the more I didn't want them to win. So it was like this here, back and forth. But Tom Brady is a very good friend of mine, Junior Seau, and some of the guys on that team. But I had a chance to meet Eli Manning this year. I've known Peyton forever. I've known Archie for a long time. And I always like to see good things happen to good people. And Eli Manning was a class act. He's a young kid, says the right things, has been through it all, being part of the New York Giants team. So I pulled for the New York Giants to win. Not only me, every one of my family did too, because Bill Belichick almost got to the point where he almost, to me, at least from my standpoint, thought that he was so much better than everybody else. And I don't care about the Spygate part. That doesn't bother me. It's just a person in general. I liked, growing up, I liked basketball. I liked baseball, and we played it all. I grew up in a family of 6 boys, so we did it all. Whatever sport it was, we were in it. And as a matter of fact, one of the things I wanted to do, I enjoyed probably playing defense more than I played offense on a football team. And I did play basketball, but unfortunately we do not have a team anymore. After they retired my number from football, but just very shortly after that, the school closed down. So not only they took my jersey, they retired, and they gave it back to me. Say, here, we no more school. So all the trophies now is at our bank now in our little hometown of East Brady. But I enjoyed playing basketball, but football was my love.
The College of Pennsylvania is Penn State, and Joe Paterno was not willing to give you a quarterback scholarship. And
again, to make a long story short, yes, I wanted to play football for Joe Paterno, but unfortunately he wanted me as a linebacker, and I decided no. And I went to Miami, and some of the best decisions, I made some, at the time, probably decisions that people would have looked at me and said, why? But in my heart, when I make my mind up, I go full steam ahead. And there's a couple decisions I made didn't make my parents very happy. Number one was college. They wanted me to go to Notre Dame, being Irish Catholic. My grandparents wanted me to go to Notre Dame. But I went to Miami, I saw the palm trees and all the warm weather, and had steak for the first time in my life, and lobster, and I was like, where do I sign? And unfortunately, I didn't make my parents very happy because they could not afford to go to any football games, but there was a coach by the name of Lou Saban was there. And but again, I went there, and thank God everything worked out for me. And there's a big, long story that goes with that too, but again, you don't have enough tape. And then, of course, the other decision I made to go to USFL instead of the NFL with the Buffalo Bills, another one my parents didn't want me to do, and I did the opposite. I'm not one of those kids. I listen to my parents. It just sounds like I don't, but I do. But I wanted to play in a dome stadium, and I didn't think Ralph Wilson was an owner that was ready to really build a winner there. And but he proved me wrong. Just a few short years after, when the USFL folded, he guaranteed me he'd bring some help, and boy did he ever. And here we are, many years later, been to 4 Super Bowls, a bunch of championships, AFC championships, and a lot of Hall of Famers and a lot of great times.
So in Houston, you did this run and shoot offense then. I mean, was that really your idea, or was that
No.
your Davis's?
That was Miles Davis. No, run and shoot wasn't in my book. My feet weren't quick enough, but I worked very hard to make myself quicker, faster. I'll never be a 4.7 guy. But I broke the 4.85, which to me that's blazing speed, and I did it on the AstroTurf with about a 5-10 mile an hour wind behind me. I'm serious. But I just love throwing the football, and it was almost a blessing for me because they told me, who do you want to play for? And they pretty much left it up to me to pick a team that I wanted to play for in the USFL. So I went and checked out Chicago. I checked out Tampa Bay at the time, Tampa Bay Bandits. And I said, why not play in Houston, Texas, a beautiful city, playing in the Astrodome, no wind, no rain, quarterback's dream. So I went there and ran the run and shoot and threw for like 83 touchdowns in 2 years and 10,000 yards passing, and loved every day. Loved it.
The no-huddle offense that you really instituted in Buffalo, was how much was that a hard sell for your coaches?
Not very, very hard at all. As a matter of fact, it's just, I guess it came to a point where they knew that our offense was more explosive, run the no huddle. For me, I enjoyed it because I get to call my own plays. I knew where to put players. I knew where to line Andre Reed up. I knew what Thurman Thomas meant. I knew, Don Beebe where he could line up at. And more for the other guys was the defensive linemen on the other side. They get tired very quickly. They started getting so exhausted that they couldn't rush the passer, and of course the offensive line loved that. When you can't, when you don't have guys rushing the passer, it makes their job a lot easier.
51-3 game, the Raiders. Is that the marquee game because it got you your first Super Bowl? Is that the one that really stands out?
That stood out in my mind because, again, like you said, it's the first Super Bowl we ever played in. And also, growing up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, the Raiders, when they battled the Steelers and Raiders, always played. And the Raiders were always considered the bad boys. And that was a game that everything we did worked, from a fumbled snap to a completion to a touchdown. I can go on and on. Howie Long yelling, telling us to slow the ball down. He's getting too tired. There's a lot of things to go with that. But more importantly than anything is going to our first Super Bowl.
3 rushing touchdowns.
Super Bowl.
It was time for the long-awaited, overdue celebration to commence.
Go pack your bag! Go pack your bag! Yeah, baby! Woo! Goals to win, not just to go. That's you talking. We going to the show in Tampa!
Kind of edit your career tape?
Boy, I've been asking that question a lot, and really, I think I've come up with a few different answers. One was, it's a plus and a minus, having kids when I played so they can enjoy going into the locker room, and then glad I didn't have kids, because when you don't win the Super Bowl, having kids always saying, yeah, you didn't win. And when I rewind it and I look at it, if there was anything I would change, there's not many things. Yeah, you would like to change the outcome of a couple of those Super Bowls, but that's just the way it is. That's what the good Lord gave me, and you got to be blessed with everything else that came with it. Somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose, and I know that's an old cliche, but the bottom line is it takes everybody. It's a team sport. one play can be the difference between winning and losing, which we found out, several times over and over again. But the bottom line, I've been very blessed to have some great people around me, some great coaches and great players, and made a lot of friends. And now I found myself a home right here in Buffalo, New York.
Well, thank you and welcome. Terrific. Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
32 yards from the center of the field. Adam Lingner ready to snap it back. It's 38-all. Bills can win it here. Reich puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-38. Incredible. What a comeback by the Bills.
The greatest comeback in NFL history, period. The Bills rallied from a 32-point third-quarter deficit to down the Oilers 41-38.
You find your kind of career is shaped around one game?
But, when it comes to football, yeah, I mean, that was, I played a handful of games, and that was obviously the big one. And the stage was the week before, in the last regular season game, we played the Houston Oilers in Houston, and they beat us pretty bad. I don't remember the score, but it was something like 28-3 or something like that. And do the math, it's 65-6. The last 4 quarters that we've played the Houston Oilers at this point, when we go in at halftime, they've dominated us 65-6 in 4 quarters of football. I actually think that was part of the key for our comeback, because they're feeling like now they can't lose. We're feeling like we've been totally humiliated. And, the locker room, again, the offense and the defense kind of split up at the beginning. So, maybe Walt Corey was going crazy over there. I'm not sure. But offensively, we just were kind of focusing and talking about, hey, one play at a time. How do we, let's execute. 1 first down, 1 touchdown. And, there were no rip-roaring speeches. And essentially, Marv Levy's comments were, hey, let's just fight hard and go out like men. Who knows what's going to happen?
Tell you the truth, Larry. No, I just said this is a humiliating day, and did I think we still had a chance? Well, there was a lot of time left, and there's a glimmer of a hope, but I mean, it's about the same chance you have to win the New York lottery.
Marv Levy used to always say, the difference between 98% and 100% is more than 2%. You do the math and you say, well, it's only 2%. But it's really, because of everything else that it brings, it's more than 2%. And that's hard to explain, but I know it's true. So all of a sudden, they're fired up thinking, because they come out the second half, right? They're thinking, hey, it's 0, every coach, if you're winning by a lot, like they were, their coach is going to tell them at halftime, it's 0-0, let's go out there and put it to them in the beginning of the second half. And once we do that, they'll quit and go home. Well, they did put it to us. They scored a touchdown early. The only problem is, they all of a sudden let up that 2%, the proverbial 2%. And, and again, we didn't just all of a sudden come back in one play, but it was like boom, 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 just one first down, a second first down, and then, quick touchdown. And then a turnover, and another quick touchdown. Oh, it's still okay. But then it was too late. Then Rich Stadium started going crazy, and the momentum came to our side, and we just kind of kept pressing, and eventually were able to come back.
The second half, unfortunately, began where it left off for the Bills in the first half.
And incomplete, and intercepted and taken away by the Oilers. Down the left sideline goes Bubba McDowell, and McDowell runs into the end zone for the touchdown. The ball went through
Bubba McDowell, a 58-yard return of the Frank Reich interception, and it was 35-3 Oilers, but then the comeback began.
Davis running left, trying to get to the corner flag, and he is in for the touchdown. So the Bills have finally
Kenneth
scored.
Davis around the left side for a 1-yard touchdown, and it was 35-10.
25-point deficit. But in the stands, the true believers began once again to believe. The Bills reached into their bag of tricks on the ensuing kickoff. Not just an ordinary onside kickoff, but a middle onside kickoff. The Oilers, remarkably, were not even looking for it. Thanks to a crushing block by Mark Pike and Mark Maddox, Steve Christie recovered Buffalo ball. Once again, it would be one play at a time.
We scored one touchdown to Kenny Davis, and that makes it, 35-10. And, so at that point, because now we're midway through the third quarter, they're thinking it's still 25 points, no problem. But then we did that surprise onside kick, which is really a credit to Bruce DeHaven and Marv Levy. Bruce DeHaven being our special teams coach at the time. And, and then 3 plays later, we hit BB on the touchdown pass, in which, as we all know now, he stepped out of bounds on the play, but they didn't see it. So, now all of a sudden, in the course of just a few minutes, now it's 35-17, and, I think it's like, could, this is kind of crazy. Could this really happen? But
35-17, Bills next possession, and Reich does it again.
Reed at the 5, in for the touchdown. Andre Reed has scored.
Reich on the mark, 26 yards to Reed. It was 35-24, and the Bills were down by just 11 with over 4.5 minutes to go.
But it was really that next touchdown, the third touchdown, is when I really felt like on our side where it came to the point like, we're going to win this game.
This was a touchdown to Reed.
Yeah. But I just really felt like, things were going our way, although we did have to, in the fourth quarter, go back into the wind. And it wasn't a devastating win, but it was enough of a win to make a little bit of a factor. And that's why in the third quarter we had the wind.
Right.
And for me, I wasn't a real strong-arm quarterback at this point in my career. So I needed to, so some of the passes I threw in the third quarter with the wind, I'm not sure I could have thrown into the wind. Right. But that's just the way it was. It's the way it worked out.
Backs up, he looks, he throws, Reed, touchdown! Reed for the touchdown! Unbelievable! The Bills are back in.
Following a Henry Jones interception on a 4th and 5, Reich hit Reed from 18 yards out. It was 35-31 after 3 quarters.
He looks, he throws, touchdown! Andre Reed for the touchdown!
Reich 17 yards to Reed, and the Bills had their first lead of the day, 38-35, with 3:08 to go in the fourth quarter.
At one point, the decision had to be made. You were in field goal range, fourth quarter, 4th and 5, and you decided to go for it. And the touchdown to Andre Reed. Was there much conversation on the sidelines at the time? Was, well, let's take the 3 points, or?
No, not really. What had happened was, play before, I was at the line of scrimmage and I was audibilizing, and they were moving around their defense a little bit, and the play clock was running down, and they had made an adjustment defensively that I wanted to call an audible, and I didn't have enough time, so I called timeout. And everybody thought I was calling timeout because they thought I was calling timeout because I wasn't sure, like I was questioning Coach Levy's decision to go for it. And the good thing was Coach Levy and I were 100% on the same page. I mean, not that it mattered what I thought. He's the boss. I'm going to do whatever he tells me to do.
So it was tied at 38 into overtime. The Oilers win the toss, but then Warren Moon, one pass too many. Nate Odom steps in front of this one at the 37, a 2-yard return, and the Bills are in business. Enter Steve Christie to win it.
32 yards from the center of the field. Adam Lingner ready to snap it back. It's 38-all. Bills can win it here. Reich puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-38. Incredible. What a comeback by the Bills.
Steve Christie hits for the game winner.
I kind of wanted to get that embrace with Steve, and then I was, it was just more jubilation and let's go in and celebrate.
Right.
Not too many things that I can ever tell you that you ever experienced that or anything like that. Just, to hear the crowd just going crazy and just really being there when we needed them, not losing hope in us. The guys on the sidelines just, encouraging one another, saying, let's just stick together.
Reich's big plays were plentiful. Reich to Beebe. Reich to Reed. Reich to Reed again on 4th and 5. And the go-ahead score with 3:08 left. Another dart to Andre Reed. And while everyone around him was getting caught up in the emotion of this wild comeback, somehow Frank maintained his perspective.
What did your wife say to you?
You know, we drove home listening to that song, In Christ Alone.
Right.
And, you know, honestly, just, you know, weeping and just saying, Lord, thank you.
The number 9 player not in the Hall of Fame, Steve Tasker.
You guys are out of your territory over your special teams guys, aren't you?
You're a superstar. Yeah.
Steve Tasker defined what a special team player is.
Even Bill Parcells told Marv Levy that he had to game plan around Steve Tasker.
Eddie Abramowski.
Abby-Doo, he was great. He was he's always, at the time I played when he was there, he was always one of the first people in the organization that every player met, head trainer. He had a wealth of knowledge that was, it really sometimes amazed me. He said, he'd say, you know, I got this, I got these symptoms, I got this symptoms, and he wouldn't even have to examine you, and he'd say, listen, it's going to be this, it's going to be this long, it's going to feel like this, and it's going to look like this, you know, and he knew. And he'd seen so much over the course of his career, because he started when, you know, ice and aspirin was the treatment, and you know, then it got to the point where it was ultrasonic treatments, and you know, electric stem, and all the stuff that they use, and you know, even more modern techniques of using it. He knew how long it was going to take for something to heal, and how long you were going to be out. He was a great guy. Plus, he was fun. He was great. We used to play cards in training camp. He was great.
Fred Smerlas.
Freddie was, I used to call my Uncle Gigi, but Fred was an outstanding football player, played nose tackle in a 3-4 defense, nose guard in a 3-4 defense, and went to 5 Pro Bowls over 9 years, for 3 or 4 years through the Hank Bulla era as a head coach, and then also went once with Marv as a nose tackle. Was a great player, unselfish, great team-oriented guy. Probably a little right politically, just to the right of, you know, Rush Limbaugh. You know, yeah, he's to the right of Newt Gingrich. You know, so it's, yeah, he's pretty conservative in his political leanings.
Was there much of that talk in the clubhouse, kind of non-football political?
Not really, not too much. Some, but not really. Only as it really pertained to us, you know. And if there was a story going on or something in the news, we'd talk. Everybody'd talk, comment on it. But you know, you had guys from every walk of life, you know, from every corner of the country. So you had every view too, as well. So, but it's one of those locker rooms. We had a lot of very intelligent guys in that locker room. So if you said something, you better be able to back it up, because somebody would shoot it down. You know, you really had to be able to defend your point of view, because everybody was fair game.
Those who I've talked to, you know, whether it's Bruce and Shane, a lot of people, they all kind of reflect on Darryl Talley as the guy who could really get the most out of players and really push them, and
yeah,
be probably the only guy to really get into Bruce's face.
Sure. Well, he and Bruce are close.
Yeah.
Darryl had a persona about him where the guys on the team really believed he would fight for something he believed in, for the good of the team. And it didn't matter who it was, whether it was, you know, coaches, players, and to his credit, Darryl was always stood for what was best for the team. Not best for him, not best for the defense, not best for whoever, for the good of the team, the way it should have been. And that's why, you know, when Darryl spoke, people listened, and in Bruce. And well, let's face it, I mean, we had a good team, and we had Bruce and Jim and Thurman and Andre and, you know, and Fred Smerlas, and we had some guys that you know, that accomplished a few things, and sometimes they needed to be told no. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes they needed to be told to shut up and sit down, and Darryl would do it, and they'd listen.
You talked earlier about a couple of receivers, Andre Reed and James Lofton. You know, here they are, and receivers tend to have their own personalities unto themselves. Was that an easy mix to have guys of such AAA abilities?
Well, Andre Reed was a special athlete. He came into the league very rough out of Kutztown State, had a lot to learn about being a professional receiver, but to his credit, every year he would go and he'd work on something in his game that needed to be worked on. Already had great hands and he was strong with the ball and good ball skills, great body control, but you know, like one year he would go out and he wanted to run better routes, and he absolutely did. He came back running great routes, and he wanted to run better after the catch, and he certainly did the next year. There were things about his game he worked on, blocking downfield, and he was really dedicated to it. And then we had a guy like James Lofton. We got him late in the '89 season, James Lofton, and what a breath of fresh air he was. He was a great addition to that team. He was really one of the things, him along with Cornelius Bennett, were players that not only were great players, but they were also personality who were catalysts for other players to become great, to relax in some cases, or to become more professional in others. They had great personalities that mixed with the chemistry of that locker room, particularly the guys at their position. Cornelius with guys on the defensive front, and certainly James with the receiving core, getting guys to not take it quite so seriously, but then on other levels take it much more seriously. And what a great addition he was to our team. And I think he helped Andre immensely, not only with his ability to draw attention away from Andre, but also off the field, being his friend and his mentor.
Did Cornelius Bennett do the same thing for Bruce Smith?
Well, I think Cornelius was more of a guy who, for Bruce, because there was Darryl who lined up on defense right next to Bruce. And Cornelius helped Bruce most by lining up on the other side. He was a phenomenal athlete. He was a great player, great fast linebacker, great character, a great human being, and one who cared deeply about the game and about his teammates. I think if there was one player in that group and on our team who did not get the credit he deserved as a football player, it was Cornelius Bennett. I think he had Hall of Fame ability, and he was a Hall of Fame person, and I would like to see him get more credit than he has up to this point.
You know, during that golden era of the early 90s, you hear often about the offensive, Kelly, Thomas, Lofton, Reed, and often about the defense. You don't hear much about, though we know they were extremely solid, the offensive line.
Well, when you talk about what happened to that team and why it kind of stopped being the dominant force it was, it started with the offensive line. We lost Howard Ballard and Will Wolford, the two tackles, and you know, we lost. That hurt us. John Fina was supposed to be a guard, but he moved to left tackle, and actually was left tackle on 2 Super Bowl teams. That's how good they were drafting. John Fina was a phenomenal football player, played extremely well out of position. And but that, I think, was the start of it all. Kent Hull anchored that line for so many years, and they ran a lot of guys in and out of the right guard position. But Jimmy Richard was there for as long as he played on left guard, and then they moved in John Davis, you know, Glenn Parker, different guys were in and out of that lineup, Mitch Farrat. But Kent Hull was the guy who was kind of the constant on those teams. I tell them they changed the rules because of me. I made it harder on them because it used to be you get when you're covering a punt, you're out wide. The guys would they'd push you out of bounds, you know. Well, it used to be they'd push you out of bounds. I'd jump behind the players standing on the sidelines and run up unblocked and pop back out on the field. I'd do that. You know, if it happened, I'd do that, and then, you know, they outlawed that. You can't do that anymore. And it's the I don't know, they don't call it that, but it's the Steve Tasker rule. I didn't invent it, but I perfected it. And so that now you can't do that anymore. So the young guys have a little chuckle over that. But
what's the rule now? If they chuck you and you go out of bounds, are you out of the play?
No, you can come. You have to make an attempt to come right back in, but they can't hit you until you're back in.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's great. Thanks so much. I
My pleasure.
Tasker's the best special team player ever, which I think he is.
That's the most spectacular special teams play I have ever seen.
He's first ballot.
That's all she wrote, guy.
the quiet man of this football team, Scott Norwood. He can fire the shot heard round the world now. Oh boy, hearts beat faster in Buffalo. This shot will be 47 yards. Reich waiting for the snap. Puts it down on the way. It's long enough. And it is no good. He missed it to the right with 4 seconds to play.
As it turned out, the snap operation from afar looked good. In fact, people called me, the following weeks after, said, sorry about the game, but your snap was good. And it wasn't even really until probably 2 years after the game that Steve Christie, during training camp down in Fredonia, we were just walking to the dining hall, and he said, Adam, did you know that Super Bowl 25, that the laces were 1/8 of a turn off? I was like, no, they weren't. He's like, yeah, they were. I said, well, I thought I saw on Sports Center, because I never went into the stadium and studied the film. Just too depressing. So oh, excuse me. But I did recall on Sports Center seeing a pretty good angle of it once, and I thought, yeah, the laces were maybe 1/8 of a turn off, but it looked like he turned it a little bit when he put it down. So I wasn't so sure Steve was right. So it turns out it wasn't until Thurman Thomas's Hall of Fame induction reception that I saw Frank Reich. So this is just a couple of years ago. So I see Frank, and I said, Frank, we have to talk. He said, okay, yeah, great to see you. I jumped right in. I wasn't very pleasant. And he goes, I said, about the kick. I said, did you turn the ball? I didn't have to say, Super Bowl 25 or anything. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. He goes, Adam, it was the weirdest thing. He said, I don't know if it's where my face mask was or something. He said, I had no idea where the laces were. I said, well, Frank, I said, that's because as you caught the ball, you can't see them and you can't even feel them because they're in the space in between your fingertips. He said, so I said, unless you would have just figured out, I can't see them, I can't feel them, they must be here, you wouldn't turn the ball. So I said, so you telling me you didn't turn the ball? It's like, no, I had no idea where they were, so I just put the ball down. Well, what Steve had told me, which I had never heard until that time, I would have thought that I would have come across this at some point. If the laces are 1/8 of a turn off, the ball doesn't tail off at the end. It doesn't hook. It just flies straight. And that's what that ball did. So
waiting for the snap. Puts it down on the way.
Lost the Super Bowl, not by the couple of feet that it was wide right. We lost the Super Bowl by a 2 to 3 inch turn of the ball.
That's a technique or technical aspect that I doubt if anybody would have ever even known that the process. So when you snap it back,
Scott Norwood had a great career, and what does everybody remember?
Right.
They remember that miss. And I was even thinking, after running into Frank, I ran into Steve at Mr. Wilson's Hall of Fame festivities, and I was just thinking, man, we should just get Frank, get Scott, and put the three of us together and tell that story, because that turn of the ball was so much more significant than people know, it wasn't all on Scott. I mean, we all had plays we could have made better, so it didn't come down to that, or that it was a 30-yard field goal instead of a 47-yard field goal. But it'd be nice to kind of clear the air for him, I think, because he just recently came to Buffalo to do a card signing. He hadn't done anything for a really long time, and I know he's feeling it. So it'd be nice to sort of clear the air, publicly, so more people understand that it wasn't just Scott that didn't make that field goal.
Right. What's the perfect snapback?
The perfect snap is just going to come right across the holder's fingertips, so that if you use the analogy of a clock, so that it's at 12 o'clock. Right. So that lace is pointing straight out towards the goalpost. And we had pretty good numbers. I mean, it wasn't very often that they had to, turn the ball.
Right.
So that so maybe I spoiled Frank a little bit too much earlier in the season. He had never had that ball that was in that little space in between his fingertips.
Well, the one that you do see a lot, and we've had, Frank has been here, as has Steve Christie, the kick, you know, the Oilers kick.
Oh, yeah.
And talk about that particular wild game and the sense that was going on, the great comeback.
Yeah, the greatest comeback in NFL playoff history. I think that's like my proudest snap because it was a little bit of a blustery day, and if you ever get a chance to watch the replay, look at where the ball hits Frank. Because he said, Adam, the wind's blowing around a little bit, just make sure you don't get the ball high. You know, keep the ball down. And if you watch the replay, it's about as low as it can be and not be hard to handle. It's just like turn the tip of the ball and it's on the ground and ready to go. And so that was really really fun.
It'll be a third down play coming up, and Steve Christie is coming into the game. The Bills spent a lot of money to get him, and now he gets his shot from about 31 yards. Bills can win it here. Reich puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have...
And then too, if you can, I don't know if you can find me on the replay of the celebration, but I run up to Steve and I'm like, good job, and I start running off the field. Like, okay, my job's done. We win.
He gets his shot from about 31 yards. Bills can win it here. Reich puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it.
It was kind of icing on the cake to be able to hold for the kick and to be there when Steve made it.
You know, so it was really a lot of fun to be a part of that kind of game because, like I said, when everybody started counting, I'm not just talking about teammates. I just felt like everybody in the stadium, anybody Bills fan around the country that might have been watching was just saying, okay, this is what we need, this is what we're going to do, and it was you know, time to get it going.
Well, you do lose track of the fact that when you watch the game in the fourth quarter, all of a sudden, you know, you got yourself back in the game with a lot of time left in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, it's not as if it was a last second, you know, and then somehow you got a ball back and you did it, so you had some time. Did you steal Thurman Thomas's helmet?
No.
What happened?
I don't know. I feel bad about that because Thurman had such a great career, and what do you bring up? You bring up the helmet, you know? I mean, and I've seen Thurman a few times, and he's now back in Buffalo, which is great. And but I know in the years when he was living down in Florida, you know, when he'd come up occasionally. One time I ran into him at a restaurant, and I just thanked him, and I told him how I marveled at him because somehow he would play at such a high level all season long, but for those playoffs he would just crank it up to another level that you just didn't think he had. And he would just do that continuously in these big playoff games. And I also mentioned to him too that I'll share with you is that I always took a special fondness of beating the Dolphins. And the great thing about being in the no huddle and beating the Dolphins was that, you know, after a few years of running the no huddle, Jim's up on the line of scrimmage calling, you know, it's 3rd and 1 or 2, and Jim's calling blue 56, blue 56. They've been hearing that call for 3 years. They know that that's Thurman off tackle. And so after the game, you know, Shula's comments, well, we just didn't execute. Well, not that you didn't execute. We told you the play. It's 3rd and 1 or 2, and we just ran it right through your guys. They tried to execute. They just couldn't execute at the level we were executing. You know, so it was, you know, so I shared with Thurman just, you know, things like that, how I marveled at him and how I just loved the fact that we could tell him where he was going and they still couldn't stop him.
Versatile, tough, and always outspoken, Thurman Thomas is undoubtedly one of the greatest running backs to play the game. In a career spanning 13 seasons, this 5-time Pro Bowler led the Buffalo Bills to 4 straight Super Bowls, was named the NFL's MVP in '91, and retired as the league's 9th-ranked rusher with 12,074 yards.
My team actually was the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even though growing up in Houston, I was a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, only from the simple fact that Mean Joe Green, was from Texas,
Right.
and I followed his career when I was
Where
little.
else would you rather be than right here, right now?
San Diego? No, go ahead. Okay, nah. Well, you asked me, so there it was. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Feisty and vocal with the press, his comments were sometimes controversial.
We were at each other's heads a few times because we all wanted to win. It wasn't just me and Thurman. It was me, Thurman, Andre. We had a bunch of egos on the team.
Bickering Bills, you know, as you were kind of coming together for that Super Bowl year.
Right.
Was that a maturing process for?
I think it was a maturing process for all of us because once if you get a great head coach, not everything's going to really come together at the first year.
Yeah.
Because he's going to try to decide, okay, what type of personality does this guy have? What type of personality does this guy have? And it all has to get together. And like Bill Polian and John Butler and them guys said, you know, I was always kind of the, I guess, the missing piece. They had the defense, they had the wide receivers, they just didn't have the running back. And once I got there and felt comfortable around these guys, and I've always been an outspoken guy about it because I've always been team-oriented. And I know Jim Kelly was, you know, he was the head dog in Buffalo, no doubt about it. He was a guy that everybody looked up to. But I just felt deep down inside from all the teams that I was on, even in high school, junior high, and college, that just wasn't the way to go for it, about talking about your teammates and stuff like that. So even though I did call out Jim Kelly back in 1989, I think it was something that was needed. I think it was something that really helped that football team. And if you look at the last game of the season that we played against the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs, you notice all the guys holding hands on the sideline. And I think at that point, even though we lost a football game, it was something that we can build on.
Breaking the record of one of the NFL's most legendary players in history lingers prominently in his memory.
I think the statistic that I'm most proud of is that I led the National Football League for 4 straight years in total yards from scrimmage.
To even be mentioned in the same sentence with the Jim Brown, and I know Jim Brown held the record of leading the league in consecutive yards from scrimmage 3 years in a row, and you know, even when I got to 2, people were saying, well, you're 1 away from Jim Brown, from tying this record. And when I got to that record, they were like, well, if you lead it this year, you can break Jim Brown's record. And that to me was just like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
I mean, probably the best player who could have played at any time, even today.
Ever in a day, Eddie Abramowski. And I showed him base football cards, one after another, and I gave him Thurman Thomas, and he reacted to you. How would you act if I gave you Eddie Abramowski's football card? What would you say about Eddie?
Oh, wow. Well, the first thing that come to my mind would be pigeons.
That's right.
That would be the first thing that come to my mind, because I saw him the other night at Jim Kelly's surprise party, and the first thing I said to him was, how the pigeons doing? Because, you know, he flies pigeons. He's a professional pigeon flyer. Right? He was a guy who loved football, and he always said to me, you know, you may think that you're a tough guy, and I always remember him saying this, you may think you're a tough guy, but I know somebody who was tougher than you. And I'm like, hey, there's nobody that was tougher than me. And he always would say, Cookie Gilchrist.
Our area, we lay claim to a guy named Shane Conlan. What's he mean to Thurman Thomas?
Oh, Shane Conlan. Oh, I used to kick Shane ass every day. Oh, man. You know, he was a rookie of the year and all that stuff, but Shane was a great guy. You know, me and Shane used to always, when I first got there in 1988, you know, the first thing I noticed about Shane was that, you know, he had these little calves. He got these little calves about that big. And I got little calves too, but mine was always bigger than Shane. And but he had this enormous head on him. I mean, his head was huge. And, you know, obviously coming from Penn State, which is, you know, a linebacker, which they called back then. So it was great to go against a guy like that. You know, he was one of those guys who I went up against in training camp a lot. And I think, you know, with naming Shane Conlan, Darryl Talley, Cornelius Bennett, and those guys, you know, Those guys are really the ones that made me pretty much a ball player that I was today as far as...
Darryl Talley was pretty shy on the sidelines. What's your impression of that?
Pretty shy. You're kidding me, right? Wait a minute, if you're kidding me, right? Any guy that says when we're behind against Houston 35-3 and he gathers up everybody on the sideline and goes, all right, we have them right where we want them right now. Any guy that says that, are you kidding me? And we're down 35-3? No. And he gathers up everybody on the sideline and says, all right, we got them right where we want them now. And we go out to proceed to, win the football game in overtime 41-38, But that was, besides all the things that happened in that comeback game against Houston, that's the one thing that jumps off is at the top of my head. And it's not even Christie winning, kicking the field goal, or Frank Reich throwing the touchdown pass to Andre Reed, or covering the onside kick. It's Darryl Talley saying those words that really hits home with what our team was all about.
What's Cornelius? What did he mean to the team? He sort of came on a team from the trade from Indianapolis. Was that really a big impetus for the team?
No, well, I think it was, because I think that at that point in time, that was kind of the second big move that Bill Polian had made. His first move was getting Jim Kelly and Ken Hall to come to the Buffalo Bills, and then him making that trade for Cornelius. I think he traded Greg Bell, and then Eric Dickerson got traded to the Colts. So, and at that time, Cornelius was a great linebacker coming out of Alabama. And I think one of the stories that Abe always tells me is that first game that he ever played against was against Denver, I think it was, and him coming out and just within like 2 or 3 days of practice and just harassing John Elway all over the field, and really ended it that year with, I think he had like 17 tackles and 4 sacks against Philadelphia. And so, I mean, that was, that was key.
Look at Thurman Thomas can point out his running ability, how he goes about, making a cut into the hole, or, really setting up a linebacker to make a miss, or coming out of the backfield, the great pass routes that he runs. But from my standpoint, one thing that separated Thurman Thomas from just being that great all-purpose running back was his attention to details.
The all-90s decade team, there's Thurman Thomas and there's Emmitt Smith. I mean, that's pretty heady company.
I always talk to Emmett and Barry about, Barry played 8 games indoors. Emmett played in Texas, where there's pretty much good weather year-round, and in Buffalo, I maybe got 5 games in that were good weather games. So yeah, exactly. So when I talk to those guys, I always tell them, I probably lost about 3,000 or 4,000 yards just playing in weather like that. So I could be right up there at the beginning, right up there at the top of the list, but I had to play, as you can see, people out there
fishing.
Ice fishing, or whatever the hell they doing out there.
To be the best team in the AFC for 4 straight years, go to 4 straight Super Bowl, that's never been accomplished. We turned it around, and we put Buffalo on the map.
That's the type of team that we were.
Yeah.
We never pointed the fingers that it was your fault or it was his fault or anybody else's fault. We grew up as a team. We grew up as young players trying to achieve one goal, which was trying to win the Super Bowl. And even though we didn't achieve that goal, we remained very close friends.
Buffalo Bill linebacker Shane Conlan on hand today. As part of the event, he signed a number of items, including a jersey for the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame and about 50 copies of Gail Jarrow's latest biography on Justice Jackson. Also, Jackson Center Chair Greg Peterson sat down for a one-on-one with Conlan as well.
A rapidly developing defense was led by All-Pro Bruce Smith. 1987 first-round draft pick Shane Conlan. And Cornelius Bennett, acquired in a mid-season trade engineered by Bill Polian. Pullian was the behind-the-scenes maestro, orchestrating the Bills' return to prominence.
But Bill Pullian was really highly respected. What was he in your world?
Well, he's well, he and Marv are the reason he brought me to. I became a Buffalo Bill because of him. I mean, he liked the way I played, my temperament, and I owe him everything.
You walk into the Buffalo Bills, 1987. We hadn't quite reached the glory years yet. Could you sense it? Did you sense the rebound of?
Yeah. I mean, you could tell, especially on offense. We had a guy named Jim Kelly. I mean, the guy is. I remember just watching him throw a long ball. It's like, my God. I mean, every pass is right there. He will go down in history as being the best long ball thrower ever, I think. You know, and obviously he can make every throw. I think we had Bruce on defense, and then when we got and Bruce and Darryl Talley, and then I don't know, 3 games into the season, I think we got Cornelius. That's a funny story when we got him. I was playing outside linebacker at the time, and he's playing out. I thought, and then Darryl. We had 3 outside linebackers because I played outside linebacker in college. So I remember we signed him that day, or that Monday or something, and then I practiced all week, and halfway through the game, he comes running in for me because he was playing behind me. I think so. I start to come out. He said, "No, you go to inside." I said, "I've never played inside in my life." So I look at the coordinator. I was like, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Tackle the guy with the ball." I said, "Okay." And that's all I did. Just had no responsibility. It's kind of like that bubble thing. So it worked out good. Just for that game. Then they taught me how to play linebacker. Then I was accountable.
So Bruce Smith, what's that mean to you?
Greatest athlete I've ever played with.
Darryl Talley?
Oh, awesome guy. We had a great time. I was talking with him, that 50-year thing, it was just he and I and Darryl. We had a great time together.
Eddie Abramowski.
Oh, my man. He was if many of you know, he was our trainer. I used to go in early, just get tape, talk to him, just listen to him. He was the funniest guy ever. Love him.
He sat in your seat about a year ago.
Is that right?
And you were telling war stories about many, including you.
Yeah, he's the best. He is the best.
We talked about Kelly. What about Bennett, Cornelius Bennett?
You know, I think I talked more to him, which is sad to say, that 50-year thing than I ever did playing football. It was just weird. Back then, there's a lot of egos involved. Like like Bruce, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Just you tell he likes to talk about himself a lot, but he has changed. When he was young, he was like that, and I saw him. He wasn't at the 50th thing, but I saw him before, and he was great.
Picture of you shaking hands with Marv Levy.
What a great guy. Marv was awesome. I remember a good story about I had come to camp. And I was ready to sign. I held out for I don't know, six weeks maybe. And I was coming to camp to sign, and I remember my agent something happened, and I'm in there, and they're arguing, and I was like, man, I'm getting out of here. So my agent and Pullian, and Bill is really fiery, right? So he slammed something, and I'm walking back out, and I see Marv coming back from lunch. I felt so bad. He was so great. He came, gave me a hug. He said, listen, we'll get it done. Don't worry about it. They'll get it done. That meant more to me because I thought, my God, this guy's going to be so mad at me. He said, listen, that's between you and management. Now you're a player, I'm a coach. It'll all get done. And later that day it did. So he's just, and when I got to that, the Buffalo Hall of Fame, he called me right before I was going on. He's just a great, great man. That 4 straight Super Bowl team. It'll never be done. I agree with whoever said that before. It'll never happen again.
What happened to Thurman Thomas' helmet?
Yeah, I still don't know. I was on the other end. Yeah. It was offense on that side, which is kind of funny. There's 2 separate teams. Don't kid you. We're not all together. There's 2 separate teams. There's the offense and the defense, and then you meet on game day. Is basically it. And so we never saw them a whole lot because it's all meetings all the time. You just meet, go to practice, and then go back to meet. So then we meet on Sundays and after the game at Jim Kelly's house. That was a lot of fun.
He's wide right.
Yeah, feel bad for him.
Tell me a little bit about what was going on and maybe the senses. The offense, I mean, you're now off the field. It's the final drive. Yeah. Kelly's sort of moving his way down, and I'll tell you an Adam Lingner story here in a second.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it was just we had played so well up to that point defensively. Offensively, they were out of their mind. They scored every time they touched the ball, and it was true in that game. Every time they touched it, but we couldn't get off the field. So we did not play. That was our worst game of the year. And granted, Porcel had a great game plan. Just keep running the ball and eat up the time. So I blame the defense more than I blame Scott Norwood. I mean, you God. Although that's his job, but that's why you want your kids to be punters, not kickers. There's no pressure on punters. You get a punt block, big deal. You miss a winning field goal in a Super Bowl. That's a big deal. So I remember just seeing him after the game. It was just, what do you say? I mean, he tried to hit it. Missed it.
Was there a sense on the club that just we should never put Scott in that position?
Absolutely. Especially, well, that's what I'm saying. Defensively, it was just so bad. We were the worst in probably 2 years that we played. We just couldn't stop that guy. We couldn't get him off the field. Then every chance we had, it was third, and I remember that long one that Ingram caught. I mean, we had him 5 times. 5 guys had him, and he still got it. Yeah. So we knew all we had to do is get them off and get our offense on. And they were moving the ball at will.
Then the great comeback.
Yeah,
did you
fun.
Talk about? I've only heard from. We've had Steve Christie sit there too and talk.
Yeah, I saw him too.
And during halftime, obviously things aren't good. And what's Walt Corey saying to you guys?
Well, I remember it's a run and shoot, so they had only one linebacker in. So I was a nickel. I wasn't. Darryl was the one linebacker, the cover linebacker, and I was. If we went nickel, I was the other linebacker. So the first time they went down, I wasn't in. They score. Second time they score. So I go, well, let's go with 2. And then I came in, then they scored again, and then they scored again. I said, okay, let's get 4 linebackers. Let's go back to our old defense. So we convinced them to do it, and we started stopping, and then they started to score. It's not so much just stopping, just slowing them down. You play. That's a tough offense to play against. And then just Frank Reich was out of his mind. He was completing every pass, and it was great. It was just a great game.
Was there an aha moment on the sidelines where you kind of said?
Well, I remember at halftime saying, walking out, I said, man, everybody's screaming like, play hard or you're going to play hard or you're going to hurt. It's going to be a long off season. Just whatever happens, you better play as hard as you can, because sometimes when you take plays off, you get hurt. So you better play hard, or it's going to be a long off season, especially with lights. Then we started, scoring some points, stopping, and it was, wow. Then I just remember the fans just, the rows just emptying. People going out, and they wouldn't let them back in, I hear. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people missed a good, and it was a blackout, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people missed a good game. It was exciting. It's exciting.
So here's a Sports Illustrated article of 1986 that says, this out-of-uniform Conlan is a small-town boy who loves Springsteen and uses expressions such as really nice and so great. And you have no jewelry and hanging it from your ears, and they thought that was pretty special.
Yeah, I still don't have any jewelry. Yeah.
Now,
I'm just a kid from Frewsburg.
Just a kid from Frewsburg.
Just a quiet kid from Frewsburg.
Developing defense was led by All-Pro Bruce Smith. 1987 first-round draft pick Shane Conlan.
Waits for the snap, backs up in the pocket. He throws, it's deflected and intercepted by the Bills. Leonard Smith at the 30, down to the 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, he's gone.
For the Bills and their fans, it goes down as the greatest comeback in NFL history. For the Houston Oilers, it's the greatest choke job. With starters Kelly, Bennett, and Jackson out, with Thurman Thomas sidelined with a hip injury, the Bills give a priceless memory to themselves and fans in winning the wildest of wildcard games. At 1:41 into the third quarter, the Bills are getting beat 35-3, but they are not beaten. A 50-yard drive ends with Kenneth Davis going in from 1 yard out. It's 35-10. Following an onside kick recovery, Frank Reich goes to the air, connects with Don Beebe for 38 yards. He goes in for the touchdown, make it 35-17. With the defense doing their part, enter Andre Reed, 26 yards. He's got it for the touchdown. It's 35-24. Following an interception, it's the Reich to Reed connection again, 35-31. The 28 points in the third quarter would set an NFL postseason record. It would be 38-38 in overtime until Steve Christie hits for the game winner.
From being down, 35-3, and Frank getting us back in the saddle, and to be even in the opportunity to have the opportunity to go out and kick it. I mean,
halftime, it's here you are down 28 or 20, whatever it was, 25-3. It was substantial, and then come out the second half, and there's an interception, and it's even worse.
Oh, it was terrible. Darryl Talley was running up and down the locker room saying, "Come on, guys, it's not over, it's not over." And we're kind of looking around, going, "Who's he talking to?" Yeah. This guy's crazy, and like.
A lot of character. And for us to be getting that butt beaten in our own backyard doesn't make any sense, and for us to play like we did the first half. I mean, it was like they were just running through us like we were a sieve. And, Walt told us at halftime that grimace to us. Hey, 60 minutes, baby. Told him that's what it takes, 60.
The second half, unfortunately, began where it left off for the Bills in the first half.
And incomplete, and intercepted and taken away by the Oilers. Down the left sideline goes Bubba McDowell, and McDowell runs into the end zone for the touchdown. The ball went through
Bubba McDowell, a 58-yard return of the Frank Reich interception, and it was 35-3 Oilers. But then the comeback.
Threw a pick, first play out, but the thing is, we never really gave up, and we kept making plays, and we got an onside kick, and things went off from there, and a couple of big receptions, a couple of big passes downfield, and we were back in the game.
Did you get a sense, though, I mean, really, as it was progressing along, that there was a rah-rah guy that was really making it, or was it just a...
It's kind of a feeling that the momentum was definitely changing our way. The question was, do we have enough time to really make up for the deficit? And that was the amazing thing, is that we were able to catch up, and they fumbled a field goal attempt too, and that helped us.
That's right.
That was 3 points there that we really couldn't afford to give up. So that was huge, and that's when you really knew that things were changing, and we had a shot to win it.
And actually, Del Greco got the field goal with 12 seconds left to go into overtime. Was that sort of a deflating thing, saying, "Oh my gosh, we've gone this far, this fast"?
Well, no, I think because we were down by so much at that point, we all realized that, hey, so what? We get in the overtime, that's way better than we were at halftime.
That's right.
This game is still ours. We still have an opportunity. It's, take advantage of whatever we get at this point.
Well, tell me, you see the picture again, was the adrenaline pumping a little bit more than ever, where, in fact, this field goal would have put you into a position where nobody's ever been before?
I didn't think of that at the time. This was my first playoff game. So basically it was a 32-yarder. That's all it was. I hit those in practice every day, and that's how I looked at it. Hey, this is an opportunity to finish off a great game. I didn't know it was the greatest comeback ever until the next day. And the great thing is that Frank Reich was my holder, so it was neat for me to be on the field with him when it was all said and done, and we got the game over with. And you didn't come down from that game until maybe the next day. Right. You just, I got home and, had dinner or whatever, and lay in bed just going, wow, what happened? And then I realized, if all the playoff games are going to be like this, forget it, I'm done. I can't handle all this pressure. It was crazy pressure when you think about it. Yeah. Afterwards, I always thought about the pressure after. I never really worried about it during a game. Right. And now I think back, and generally speaking, for every Sunday, there's times I look back and I say, well, who was that guy? Right. What happened on Sunday? There's a switch in there, and I think we all have it at that level. There's a sort of an on and off switch, and at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, it's on.
Right.
Puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-38. Incredible. What a comeback.
The Buffalo Bills beat the odds and make the biggest comeback win.
It's out in your memory.
Well, the Houston game again. Yeah. There's one game that was we played Denver, and they almost didn't make the flight. They had a big snowstorm out there, and I guess Jason Nealon, the only way he got to the game was his neighbor picked him up in a Hummer and got him to the airport. If his neighbor didn't pick him up, they didn't have a kicker for the game. So I hit a 55-yarder at the end to tie. We ended up losing the game anyway, but I remember that because it was I think that was my hardest kick. That was a tough kick to make.
By the way, do you still have the longest field goal in Super Bowl history?
Yes.
How long was it?
54.
54.
And that was a small concession for in a game that you lose, like that, of that magnitude that you lose. I mean, it was nice to have.
Next. Not going to keep you anymore. Is that a hard call to get?
With the Giants, it was kind of a strange situation because they had signed me the week before the first game. Todd France was a rookie. He was there all off season, went to every workout, and had a very good preseason. So I didn't expect to get a call from them. When I came in there, I had a good workout. They signed me. I was almost on the plane back here, but they signed me, and I ended up staying. And at the end of the season, I think I was 36 or 37 at the time. The big fallback was my kickoffs. The colder I got, the shorter they got. Mind you, I kept reminding them that happens to the 25-year-old guys too, but not as much. I was pretty happy with my field goals, but the kickoffs was what really hurt me. They offered me a one-year deal to come back, and I just wasn't too interested in doing that.
Yeah.
You know.
You have become an artist extraordinaire. When did you pick that up? Was that something you all your life?
I worked at that in high school, and then in college I was a studio art and art history major. So, like I was saying before, despite the fact that my family has quite a history in the legal profession, I was the black sheep and went to the art side and the athletic side.
And extremely well, and you've been just a real credit to everything you've done in the community and Camp Good Days and everything else. So,
thank you.
I really appreciate it, Steve.
Well, you're welcome. My pleasure.
I see the large crowd looking for your autograph.
It'll be a third down play coming up, and Steve Christie is coming into the game. The Bills spent a lot of money to get him, and now he gets his shot from about 31 yards. Bills can win it here. Reich puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good.